This episode of The Adam Messer Show is brought to you by Dead Pixel Pictures, deadpixelpictures.com. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is The Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. This is the second hour today, and we have Sebastian Messer in the studio going to play some live music for us. Take it away, Bass. Awesome. Thank you, Bass. All right. So welcome back, Rachel Brune and Elizabeth Davis. Thanks for being here with me today on the show. How y'all doing?
Still doing fine.
Trying to dig my way out of the movers' boxes in my office.
Yeah, I hear you. So, everybody, if you're just now tuning in, thanks a lot. You're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And Rachel Brune has been on the show a number of times. Today we're talking about her new anthology, Stories We Tell After Midnight, Volume 2, a Chrome Girls Press publication. So, Rachel, can you give us like a little breakdown or a little rundown of the new anthology?
Absolutely. So, of the two anthologies that we put out this year, Stories We Tell After Midnight is it's straight horror. The anthology in the spring caught us a break. We took both horror as well as dark fiction, stories that dance around the edges of the genre. Maybe did some genre blending. But for this anthology, we went with good old-fashioned horror. We've got psychological horror. We've got some monsters in there as well. I think we have one zombie apocalypse because, it's horror is not complete without a zombie apocalypse.
I know, right? Werewolves and vampires and zombies. Yep. Oh my.
And so this is, like I said, this is 24 stories. It'll be available on Amazon in both print as well as if you're a member of Kindle Unlimited, you'll be able to read it there as well.
Awesome.
And so it'll be here on October 1st, ready, but you can also pre-order it if you want to be able to read it.
Yeah, if they
right
want to get more
midnight.
information, they can go on to Amazon if they want to get more information for sure. Elizabeth, can you tell us about your story that's coming up in the anthology?
The Cat-Mouth Woman and Me, as mentioned before, is a take on a famous Japanese urban legend, the Cat-Mouth Woman. If you want to hear the whole breakdown, I can tell it again, or have people go back to the beginning of this episode. Which would you prefer?
Well, this is the second hour, so it'll be a separate episode. That's why I'm kind of recapping for anybody that might be tuning in right now for the radio show. So, yeah, if you could just give like a little summary.
The Cut-Mouth Woman is a popular urban legend from Japan, which is about a boogie man who haunts the streets of school-age children. Basically, you're walking home, and you run into a woman with a mask, not uncommon at all in Japan, and not uncommon anywhere else right now. And she'll ask you if you think she's pretty. And you say yes, because you're polite. And then she will take off her mask, and you'll see that her mouth is cut to ear to ear.
Mm-hmm.
She'll say, "Am I pretty now?" Say no or yes, you'll end up dying. You gotta pick a trickier third option, and what that third option is constantly changing based on the story, and that's how you'll escape her wrath. And I got interested in the story because I felt like there was a deeper basis for this than just a boogeyman story.
Yeah, that's really cool. So Yeah, last hour we were talking about like storytelling and why we all like short stories. Why don't we talk about writing this hour? Why don't we talk about that a little bit? Because we're all three writers. So, Rachel, what do you enjoy? I know you write. You got your werewolf series, right?
I do. I am finishing up the third. Well, it was going to be the third book. Now I'm pretty sure it's going to be the fourth book in the series, and that will be republished potentially by the end of the year. We'll see what happens with 2020. But it's werewolf. I call it werewolf action adventure urban fantasy. And it's about a werewolf who used to be a secret agent until he retired.
And
is
that the Cold Run, or what is the series called? The Rick.
It's called the Rick Keller Project.
Rick Keller, yeah.
And yep. And the first book is indeed Cold Run. It was published by a small press a few years ago, but as I started making my way through the series, I actually asked to get my rights back, which they were very happy. They were very nice and did.
Cooperative.
And now I'm doing a lot of series doctoring and work and finishing up so that I can put it back out in the world. Because, honestly, in the last 3 years, I've learned a lot about being a writer. And so as an indie publisher, that's something that you can do. You can take a series, you can take an idea and revisit it and make it better.
Yeah, I feel like the same for me. I just share this with the listeners out there. I know I've told you this, Rachel, but I haven't talked to you about this before, Elizabeth. But I had written a novel, or a short novel, in like 2014 or so, maybe 2015. It took me like 12 months, and I only wrote like when I felt inspired, and it had like all these plot holes and all this other junk, and it was just kind of garbage. And so yeah, I think it was 2014 because I took about a year off, and I sent it to a friend of mine who's a writer, and I asked them to read it. And a couple months go by, and I never heard anything back. And finally, I asked them. I was like, what do you think? And they were like, well, they kind of were kicking the can around. You know what I mean? And
that is one of the things. Oh, sorry.
Oh, what I was saying was basically that they didn't want. I said you could just tell me, and they're like, well, it was just awful, kind of thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I was so used to being a writer for the newspaper and getting good feedback on that, and then my business writing and academic writing, and always having really excellent feedback on that, and then to feel like somebody really did not like my fiction writing, and this is a good friend of mine that they gave me good feedback on it. It just kind of was like, wow. And I learned so much since then about writing fiction, because like writer's block and writing only when you're inspired. There's all these myths that you have like kind of build up in your head, and one thing I do like, though, kind of retouching on Ray Bradbury's thing, was if you have writer's block, that means that you're like it's not right for you. Like something's wrong with the story for you, and I thought that was so interesting. But what were you going to say, Elizabeth?
Oh, I was just say it says one of the things that terrifies writers, semi-professional to professional, is when a friend of theirs asks, "Can you read this? Can you read this work for me and tell me how it is?" Because in order to get good at writing, you have to get used to very, very blunt criticism, and most people do not want to hear you trash their baby. I can say that I have some people. It's like, oh yeah, I've worked on this, and worked so hard. It's like, okay, how can I gently say that this plot point doesn't work and all that, when I'm like, with my mom, it's like, hey, this thing sucks. Tell me how to fix it.
Yeah, I like those friends where you could be blunt with them without being, there's a difference between like being blunt and then being, overbearing. I feel like, there are people out there that they are overbearing with it. But I have some friends, I've got a couple friends that like we can talk about, stuff and just be, just brutally honest with each other. We're not cutting each other down. We're just saying, hey, this is just not a good fit, or this is not, this isn't like your best work. You can do better.
Well, I think that Elizabeth had a really good point. Namely, if it's not working, tell me what's not working. And the ability to give that sort of feedback is something that I think writers have to develop, or even readers. And I know that can be really hard sometimes to find that feedback without hiring an editor. For me, I have found it in writers' groups and making friends with writers who are willing to, like exchange manuscripts and things like that. But it is kind of a responsibility when someone does trust you with their manuscript. And for me, I always try to, if I say yes to reading something, I want to make sure that I have the time to sit there and not just say, oh, I liked it or I didn't, but to figure out why I didn't like it, or figure out why something's not working rather than I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a skill I think that has to be developed as much as the actual skill of writing does.
I think I've gotten notorious on the No Sleep book group for my critiques, which are just like comments all over the manuscript. I mean, a lot of people have given me a lot of love for it because I try to look and go, I like this thing about your plot, but this part isn't working. Here's some parts I would think about changing as like, oh, this description would be punched up a bit. I try to, always keep it positive oriented, going, this section sucks, this section isn't quite working. Here's what I would do about it. Or I really love this part. You don't need the sentence after it. It should just stand on this wonderful sentence.
I'll tell you something I've learned talking about that same sentiment. I agree with you, Rachel, and Elizabeth. I think you made a good point. I've also had to learn not to give unsolicited advice because when people have asked me to read stuff of theirs, it's kind of a touchy situation, especially if you know the person. But I try to let them know, good points, and then try to let them know what didn't work for me or whatever. But if I'm just reading something, let's just say some of the ARC stuff that I've done, like the reading for other authors or whatever. I read it as a reader. I don't try to read it as with the editing perspective. Now, obviously, when you're reading stuff, you're going to have all your different things going on in the background. But I try to read it and see if it's enjoyable, and if it's something that I really like or whatever. But I try to I've really not just with writing, but also in other aspects of my life. I try not to give people unsolicited advice. Just because it's almost like nobody wants to hear it. If they ask you for your advice, then they do. But if not, but if you're in a specific group where it's like this is a critique group and you expect people to give you a critique, it's like an unwritten thing or it's a written thing or whatever, it's an agreement that you have, then that makes sense. But like if it's just person to person, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just say, oh, whatever. And I would never be unprofessional. And like if I say for instance in the anthology that's coming out with the Stories We Tell After Midnight Volume 2. If there's a story in there that doesn't work for me, I'm not going to be negative and unprofessional about it. I just wouldn't mention it. I just wouldn't say anything about it. But I feel like just to kind of go back along this, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off there. But I feel like in today's world, with the internet and there's so much accessibility out there that people feel like they have the right to say whatever they want. And they'll, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, it's just crazy, and I think to myself, like, why would you go through the, if it's something good, people might reply to it. But if it's something that they don't like, they're going to shout it out to the world, like, I didn't like this, or I didn't like that. And I'm like, dude, why? Just, if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. No big deal.
I think that one of the most useful questions that you can ask a writer who's looking for feedback is, what are you looking for? Because I think that can set up, like you kind of talked about, an unwritten, but sometimes my assumptions and your assumptions might clash. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, will you read XYZ? One of the first things I'm going to ask them is, what are you looking for? Like, what kind of feedback are you looking for?
Yeah.
And if they say, well, I just want to see... And I've actually told people this. I'm like, I want to see how far you get before you put it down. And then I'll read. And then when it starts to lose me, I'll be like, okay, this is where This is where it lost me. Do you want to maybe know my thoughts on wine? If they say yes, then I'll tell them. If they say no, then I'm like, okay, cool. And we've both fulfilled our end, but it was something that we both had that mutual expectation of. And I think that can be very helpful, especially in groups where you're going to be interacting with people multiple times.
Yeah, definitely. We got to do the station announcement real quick. Give me a second. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Everybody, you tune in today to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. Yeah, I agree with you, Rachel, there. I feel like, too, it's really important setting those expectations, having that open and honest communication. And then if you have, like, Elizabeth, with that critique group, if you're in a critique group, and, well, okay, I've got a couple different stories about critique groups, but if you're in a good critique group where everybody is actively participating and working towards the same goal, you don't have a couple of fuddy-duddies who are just like, a negative person that they just want to be negative. When you have a good group, that's, to me, their feedback is invaluable. You can't put a price on it. When you have other groups, though, where you have, the party pooper person who they just like to rain on everybody's parade, it's kind of like they're just there just to be negative. And I've seen both sides of it, in person and online. I was in a local writing group that it turned out to be a horrible experience that I had. I mean, just horrible, terrible. And I quit the group because the people that were in it were so negative that it was just not enjoyable at all. And then I've met people online where it's like, man, this is so much fun. It's so great. It's a lot of synergy. I really feel like setting those boundaries and having that expectation and having that clear communication is, and I like that question you have, Rachel. It's like, well, what are you looking for?
Yeah, there's a book that I recommend for people who are interested in participating in writers groups and in really developing themselves of how to give good feedback. Because to me, that's a very important part of being a good writer, is learning how to give feedback to other writers. And so it's a book by Joni B. Cole, and it's called Toxic Feedback. And I read this book. I think it might be out of print, but you can buy used copies on Amazon really easy. But it's called Toxic Feedback, Helping Writers Survive and Thrive. And it really addresses this topic of how to give good feedback that might be critical, but it's not, or that it's a critique, but that's not like critical.
Not being
if you know
toxic, what I mean. Yeah.
And I learned a lot from this book. In fact, I pinpointed some bad habits that I was doing. It was very embarrassing to be reading and seeing myself.
Give me an example of, like, what was the worst one?
I tended to get very harsh. And I didn't realize that I was being harsh.
Now, when you say harsh and I say harsh, I think we have two different interpretations.
Right, so,
because I don't ever think I've ever seen you being harsh at all.
Right, because I've read this book, which is why I recommend it. But so, for instance, y'all
You're going to say this one book changed you from being a harsh person.
But y'all have been edited, so you've seen what I do. And what it taught me was to read first, because before I would start reading and editing right away. And it didn't give me that step back perspective that you need to treat the work holistically. Yes, you want to step in eventually, but, read it, get a feel for it, get a feel for the rhythm. And then a lot of my editing tends to be comments. So yes, there's definitely line edits going on. Commas, punctuation, word choice, all of that. But I really do tend to rely more on comments such as, is this person's reaction consistent with the things you told me about this character on page 1, 5, and 6? right? So rather than saying, I don't think this character would do that, I'm framing it as you've set up a certain consistency with your character, but here we're seeing something that contradicts that, and I'd like to get that resolved. And that says to the author, hey, there's an issue with your writing, but I trust you enough to resolve it. And I do think that that is a more healthy way of doing it than just saying, hey, your character shouldn't be doing this. Maybe you should fix it. Or just going in and changing the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so for me, that was that started to really create a dialogue with the writer. And it also helped me avoid when the writer would come back to me and say, well, that's not what I meant. I'm like, listen, all I'm doing is reading your story. If I don't understand what you meant, this question is letting you know why I didn't know what you meant there.
Right, right. That's a good way. Hey, Bill. How you doing?
Hey, great.
Mr. Bill Cooper. How you doing, sir?
Free delivery.
Hey, did you, everybody, Bill Cooper is our guest host next hour for the Savannah at Night, and he's been on here quite a few times, but coming in, getting ready for the show, huh?
Yes, I am.
That's
great
awesome.
Guest you have today.
Yeah, I know. Bill's like a big avid fan of. He's a very supportive guy. Did you have a chance, Bill, to? Let me turn the mic on real quick. Did you have a chance to watch the video?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the video I'm talking about, everybody, is Bill is one of the.
Bound.
Yeah, he's one of the. He plays the devil in the show or the movie short. But yeah, what'd you think? I think Josh did a great job with editing, didn't he?
I think everyone connected with it did a super job, and I'm not. I'm telling you the truth. It came out beautiful.
Yeah,
and
I was really tickled.
I'm not a big critic of things. Anyone that puts something together, I always pat them on the back. Nice job. But I'm saying honestly, I can't find any fault in it. That really was a very well done production.
I agree. And not to sidetrack here, Rachel and Elizabeth, but we were talking about storytelling today, and Rachel, Rachel Brune's been on the show a couple times. And I'm in her first anthology, and she's got a new one coming out.
How you doing, ladies?
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Doing fine.
But
for a devil, I'm pretty good.
Yeah. I like that. I like the cut that Josh made for the short because Brent's like, "What are you, the devil?" And you go, "Something like that."
Something like that.
Something like that. I thought that was good. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, we were just talking about storytelling. Actually, ladies, Bill has a short story that he did. I'm not going to give any spoilers away. But Josh and I, with Dead Pixel Pictures, we're going to be working on a production of a short story that Bill wrote. It's actually a really nice little. It's a horror story, believe it or not. But we're going to be doing a production on that, and I've been trying to convince Bill to let me publish it as a short story. So we're going to be doing that too.
I never said no.
I know, right? But it's a really good one. Like, those stories where it all comes down to the very last scene of the story.
Last word in this one.
Yeah, this one's like the last word is a twist.
Changed the whole story. The very last word, and I didn't even realize it when I wrote it that way. And I stopped and I thought, "Holy mackerel!" Yeah. The entire story changed with the final word.
Yeah.
So it was it really is kind of interesting. I'm proud of it. So let's. It's in good hands here with Adam.
We're trying. But that's something I think too is, like talking about Rachel, like giving critiques or whatever of stuff. I feel like it comes down to a trust level. Like if you know the person, and like, let's just say, for example, like a new writer or a new author that you've never worked with before, and you've never read any of their work. You've never done anything with them, it kind of gives, if they're talking with you, like let's say they hire you as a piecework, deal or whatever that you're doing this stuff with, you have to maintain a certain level of professionalism, right? And you have to be able to give them, what they're looking for. But everybody's different, and I try to avoid working with like people who are, I don't know how to say it, but the folks that are a little bit too needy. You know what I mean? I try not to work with people who are unprofessional and That I don't mind if they're new. I don't mind that at all, because I like working with people who they're good storytellers and they're new, as long as they're professional about it. So tell me about something. And Elizabeth, you guys are getting ready to publish your put your first call out or whatever. Just talk to me about that. Like how do you approach that as well?
Well, we're going to approach that. That's been something we've been discussing. We need to finalize our call for what we want our call. Part of it is we're thinking about putting in a green MMMs clause, which is a story you've probably heard about of I think it was Guns N' Roses asking for green MMMs in their the rooms you hang your dressing rooms. That's it. And people put this down as this is just celebrities being out of control and needy. And one of them, actually the reason for that is because we know if they put in the green MMs, they read the rest of the requirements for how the wiring needs to be done. If we don't say green MMMs, that means our roadies have to go for the entire wiring to make sure everything's right.
So how would you apply that to a contract clause with working with a writer?
Oh, contract clause. Sorry, you kind of blurred a bit there, so I misheard the question.
That's okay. I was kind of wondering, like, how with editing, being a publisher and an editor, how trying to avoid or trying to weed out the folks or vet out the folks that are not as professional, Because I think that's an issue that we have to deal with in our personal lives as well as professional lives.
Yeah, well, that's part of it, the green MMMs clause, which is anyone whose story, someone who clearly did not read the call for submission and thus doesn't have whatever the green MMMs clause is, such as put this in your header, which is an email, so we know you actually read the frickin' call to submission. And that would be the first thing of weeding out, and then the second thing would be saying, okay, we like the story. Here would be what the contract would be, and here would be how the edit process would be. Is this acceptable to you? And that would be the next step. And then the third step is going to be discovering whoever managed to get past those two steps that's going to drive us crazy.
Rachel?
Well, I probably won't do the green M&Ms clause, but I will say that if you're thinking about submitting and you're also thinking about not reading the submission guideline to the end, do yourself the favor and just don't submit. Because you're gonna save yourself time, you're gonna save me time, and everybody will just be happier. I think that's one of the things that anybody who's ever read Slush, if you say, "Can you believe this?" everybody who's read Slush will say, yes, I can. And everybody who's never read Slush will say, surely people don't do that. Surely people wouldn't send you an entire manuscript where they somehow managed to turn the background blue.
Surely people would send a PDF of the story written in crayon.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, so that we're going to take a station break with that. That's a good one. We'll be back in just a few minutes, y'all.
Many critical issues are facing the residents of Savannah and all Americans, including the coronavirus, homeschooling, and the upcoming general election. WRUU has 3 programs which address these issues: The Common Good on Fridays from 2 to 3 p.m., The Happy Homeschooler on Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m., and We the People, The Constitution Today on Sundays from 8 to 9 p.m. Stay informed about these important issues by tuning into these programs on WRUU.
How many times have you heard WRUU's corporate underwriting message? If you remember it, then your potential customers will remember your message as well. We are offering this space to connect corporate and institutional partners with our loyal and active listeners. Underwriting on WRUU is short, so listeners don't tune out. It's exclusive, so your message won't be lost in advertising clutter, and it supports Savannah's only community radio station. For a marketing package to increase your reach beyond traditional media, email underwriting at wruu.org.
You are attuned to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
All
This
right.
is WRUU
Welcome
LP,
back.
Savannah, Georgia.
Welcome back. And today, Sebastian, you want to play some more? Yeah. Got you in the studio. It's what is this? The first week of fall, right? A little cooler out today. A little cooler out here in Savannah. We'll play some little music there. Hey, nice, man. That was pretty good. All right, so we are back. Let's see. Yeah, we were talking about like vetting stuff. So give you an example of something that happened to me. Not with this anthology, but when I first started doing the Savannah Quill stuff, I did like a magazine. Like I wanted to do like an e-magazine or whatever. Came out in 2017, and so we did a call for short stories, and we got like 12 short stories or whatever, local authors, and it was kind of weird because I put like you had to give a $5 submission fee because I didn't want just like a bunch of spam, and the money that we raised from the $5 went towards the prize. The first place got like $100 or something like that, I think it was, and they got I think it was like $100. I can't remember exactly, but they also got an award plaque or whatever. But the whole thing was with it. Hey, Chad, what's up, man?
Got some homemade cinnamon rolls.
Awesome, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
We're just like full of surprises today here in the studio. But it was, and I'll never do this again because it was such a nightmare dealing with the folks that submitted. The problem was that we had an open submission for like a fan's favorite, like they get to vote on it, and like one of the folks had like 30 votes from the same IP address, and I was like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. So you just kind of learn as you go, and working with those folks, the person that won the contest, I did not judge the contest at all. I had independent judges, but the person was like, talking about toxic. The person was so toxic that I just completely cut off all communication with them completely. It was just like, you know what, this person was just horrible to deal with, and I think that's one of the things that I talking about the green M&M clause, because people think that that's like, they're trying to be prima donnas or whatever. But like you said, they're just trying to make sure that the wiring is done right and that they read through the contract. But yeah, even with this anthology, I had open call and I had people submitting stuff that wasn't even like the deal with the devil, type premise. And they would submit stuff that has nothing to do with, any kind of deal or any kind of devil or anything like that. And I'm like, what? I mean, like, does this get any better? Or
Sounds like you had to make your own deal with the devil to get this anthology out.
It wasn't that hard to coax people into doing it. But I've learned quite a bit publishing this first one. There's stuff that I'm going to do differently for the next one, and stuff that I'm going to focus on, like publishing schedule for next year differently. But I feel like it's a big thing, though, when you're trying to build something. You're gonna have toxic people like that. You're gonna have people that are just want to attach themselves to whatever project you're doing. And I feel like you just have to keep pushing forward and keep trying to be professional. And then distance yourself from the folks that are like that are toxic, or that they're going to cause problems because, you know, whenever they put something out, if they're in your anthology and they put stuff out, it's like, whoa, you know, this is how are these the folks you want to work with your publishing house? Like, no, not really.
Well, I think that it's always, everything's a learning experience, and sometimes things are hard learning experiences, and sometimes you can make some connections to learn things the easy way. At least that's what I tell myself every time I start getting ready to put an anthology out.
I swear, it's like you can look at what other people are doing, and, you know, you can talk to them. I mean, like, you know, with you, Rachel, I looked at what you were doing. I talked to you, but you still, I mean, like, you can learn some shortcuts. I mean, like, it does help, but, you know, there's really no shortcut to doing the work.
No, and that's something that whether you're doing the publishing part of it or you're doing the writing part of it, there's no, like, there really is no substitute. And sometimes it takes you, sometimes I learn that, sometimes I forget it. But it's just, you just got to keep moving forward a little bit at a time, especially nowadays. You know, I was kicking myself because the beginning of this year I was going to put out 2 series. I have the Rick Keller Project, and then I have a paranormal romance I was going to work on. I was like, yes, it's going to be full speed ahead.
Yeah.
And then, you know, everything happened, and I was like, well, maybe I'll just get 500 words a day, or maybe 1,000 words a day. Yeah. 500 words a day, maybe? Yeah. So
5 words a day.
Yeah. Can I get some words?
I know, Rachel. I'm like, oh my God, it's like you're telling my story. Because this is the same problem I had this year. Oh my gosh. I feel like everybody this year has been kind of just falling flat. Even like some of the big indie publishers that we know, you know, they've struggled with things. I mean, everybody's had to change everything around.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
So how have you dealt with that, Rachel? Or how have you adjusted to it? Like, you know, maybe that's a better...
Yeah. So, first of all, I had to take a step back. And it's not just the pandemic that threw everything out of whack. I mean, we did a cross-country move. Mm-hmm. I've got 2 kids. And there's a lot of turmoil going on. And I was like, okay, I need to prioritize. And I think what actually has helped me be a little bit more productive the past week and a half is that they finally made a decision with my kids' school what they're going to do until the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And once that uncertainty went away, I found it much easier to be like, okay, well, I can set a routine now because I know what it's going to look like. Because at first it was just going to be the first 6 weeks they were going to go virtual. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. So I would sit down with my kindergartner, and for a couple of hours they do their coloring and jumping around and all that good stuff. But when they said 6 weeks, I was like, well, I can't get comfortable because it's going to change soon. But now that they've made that decision, that certainty has helped me kind of settle down. It's helped me mentally, and now I can focus. So the first, the morning, we're doing virtual school. In the afternoon, I can open up my computer. I can get, even if it's not a huge amount of words, I just get, what I can get, and then I do anthology stuff or I do publishing stuff. So that, to me, that's any sort of certainty and regularity, like any sort of patterns and routine. For me, that's how I managed to do it. And of course, now that I've said that, something's going to happen. Knock on wood, I just know it.
I just knocked on wood for you. Elizabeth, have you dealt with anything like that this year?
Mostly how I dealt with my pandemic was to join an anthology called, I believe it's No Safe Distance Stories from Isolation, in which I kind of just vomited all my fears and anxieties into a single document, and then had to edit it into actual short story with just being, okay, this is going to be a chapter of a future novella, because I've written like a novella's worth of plot stuff into. But for me, that's what I did. And while this pandemic has been hurting a lot of people, this has actually not been the worst thing that's happened in my life. That would be a few years ago, in which I woke up being blind in my last good eye.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm still pretty visually impaired, a lot better than I was when I started, but ended up being like a year and a half from any sort of writing due to having to get through various medical procedures instead of accessibility on my computers and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what's the nice thing about the pandemic? At least I can still kind of see.
That's great. Yeah. I'll tell you, this year's been crazy for me, too. Talking about writing and publishing, I had this idea, I was on a roll last year, rolling into this year, and I published my second vampire book, and it just fell flat. I mean, like, I put it out, I didn't do the things that I was supposed to do or needed to do, and I didn't even, couldn't even get the people that read the first one to read the second one. And that's on me. But I learned from it, and even though I started the Savannah Quill in 2016, I started Valhalla Books this year as a publishing company because I wanted to separate the nonprofit charitable works that I do with the Savannah Quill from publishing and having the intention of selling books. So I started that. And it was like herding cats, getting everybody together and trying to figure out, how to, get this person and that person together and, getting all the stuff together and trying to figure out like a publishing schedule and it came together. And then my friend and I, Josh, I was talking about this movie short or whatever. I told him, I said, I want to do a book trailer, but I don't want it to be a book trailer. I want it to be a movie short. And so we started Dead Pixel Pictures and, put together a movie company, and we're, doing that. But personally, my own writing, I've got this I've got this little series that I've started, like I've written 45,000 words for, and I've restarted it 3 times. And the last couple months, I've been focusing, I've been working on this anthology every day, something every day, and I haven't been writing. I've written a couple of short stories this last month or so, but nothing major. And so I've been kind of at the point the last couple of weeks, okay, well, what do I do? Where do I go from here? How do I do the things that I want to do? And so, yeah, it's been a challenge. Honestly, there's a lot of times where I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I even doing this? I was laughing because I was talking to Bobby Nash last week, and I said, writing and publishing, it's the most amount of work I've ever done in my whole life for the least amount of pay.
Oh, yeah.
And Bobby said, hey, Bobby, was like, he's like, yeah, that sums up a lot of people. So.
I like to call it my full-time job that doesn't actually pay me.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's what I call it too. And that's why I don't have any good advice for you, because it's like, how can I do the things I want to do as I look over and I'm currently waist deep in 6 different projects at once.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is prioritizing, because I have the same thing where I've got these different ideas. I had a dream last week about a story, and I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And I started to write things down. I was like, wait a minute, I haven't done my other stories yet, so I can't do this one.
Well, you write it down and put it in the queue. Dream stuff you're going to forget, so you gotta write it down right then.
Yeah, I did, but I'm just saying, I had to stop myself from moving forward with it. But yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, I get so excited about it. But you know what I figured out for moving forward, publishing, writing my own books and things like that, I'm gonna really work on the ones that I want to do. I want to finish up the vampire series so it has a conclusion, and then I've got this idea for this short sci-fi series and some other stuff too. But just I feel like that's the best way I can go right now. I've been pushing hard to try to do pre-game for the anthology release, but it's like trying to make a ding in the universe. It's like, hey, hey, listen, without trying to spam people to buy this, buy that, buy, because that's a big turnoff.
Yeah.
The way I see it, it's like those signals that come from outer space, those radio signals, they're soft, they repeat on a regular interval, and eventually people become aware of them. And to me, that's the writing strategy that I'm at right now. I just got to keep at it. And there's a lot of other stuff going on, but eventually that signal will reach the right person that it needs to.
I kind of feel the same way. I've been trying to build my relationships one person at a time. Same thing with the readers, trying to just connect with one reader at a time. I'll give an example. I spent $100 on Amazon advertising when I first launched the pre-sale for the book, and it did nothing, like nothing. And that's on me, like I just didn't have an effective ad. So I'm, I've been looking at different ways to get it out there, to talk to people about it, and let people know. And I think it's all like a learning thing. But you're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So thanks for being with us today, Rachel and Elizabeth. We've got about 10 minutes or so left. What's something that maybe I haven't brought up that you want to talk about today?
So I think that for people like us who have been writing, and I've seen people have way more experience than I do talking about the same thing, about how hard it is. I can imagine how much harder it is for people who are just starting to write. Because in addition to, if you remember what it was like when you started writing, I know when I started writing seriously and finding that discipline to sit down, like you said, it was hard. It was difficult. And I can't imagine trying to start that right now and how much more is against the ability to sit down and be creative. So maybe just a word of encouragement to people who are sitting down to their first story, or with NaNoWriMo coming, they're sitting down, getting ready to attempt their first novel-length work. And I just want to say to keep at it. Mm-hmm. Because, it doesn't matter how many new books Amazon uploads, they don't have your book yet. Mm-hmm. And someone's going to want to read that book. Someone's going to need to read that book. So I definitely think that for anybody who needs like a word of encouragement, here's your word of encouragement. Sit down and write.
And if books seem daunting, have you thought about short stories? There's a lot of markets that you have yet to send your writing to.
Yeah, I agree. One thing on the piggyback on the NaNoWriMo thing, for anybody that does complete it, because I did it last year and I completed it. It's 50,000 word challenge. I think it's NaNoWriMo.org, I think is it. It might be .com, but anyway, it's free.
.org, yep.
Yeah, it's free to sign up. They have local chapters, like here in Savannah, we have a local chapter or whatever. It's wonderful, especially like if you want to write. Don't just write your first draft and then try to send it off as a manuscript and say, hey, I've got this wonderful story. Sit on it. Because in January, what happens is publishers get like a ton of submissions from people. December and January, they get like tons of submissions from people that are NaNoWriMo writers. Make sure that it's a well manicured manuscript. Don't just send off just whatever. And if you're going to follow the submission guidelines, make sure that you're following the submission guidelines. Don't just spam somebody and say, hey, here's my book, because they're not going to want to read it. They won't. Matter of fact, they probably won't even read it.
What I would recommend is, for those of you who are going to be finishing NaNoWriMo, is to probably let that manuscript sit for about 6 months or so, because NaNoWriMo is super intense, and it probably will take a bit of time for you to move off from this. So finish your book, working on another project, and then go back to it for doing your second round of edits, just because it's going to be coming out in such an intense headspace that I think a bit more space. 6 months might be over, maybe 3 to 4, but 1 month probably not going to be enough, especially if it's your first baby. And also, if you're a publisher, I've heard of quite a few publishers that just close for submissions in January. It may not be a half bad idea.
Yeah, I just know that that's something that has come up where publishers get plagued by a lot of raw random submissions, and I think it's great. Anybody that can write 50,000 words, you've done something that's an accomplishment. It's a big deal. But that's just an issue. Like, if you want to have the best leg up as a writer, and so if you're trying to write a book in November and December the 1st, you're trying to send it off to a publisher, it just doesn't. It's not going to help as much, So just kind of, I guess do a little bit more research, before you try to submit to somebody or whatever. And that's a lesson that I learned from last year, because I wrote my second book with the NaNoWriMo, and I published it in January, and I just fell flat with it. And I was like, I messed up. So it's something I'm going to be working on. And I self-published. I didn't even try to submit it to somebody else. I self-published. So...
Yeah, I still have yet to do NaNoWriMo, mostly because I have spent most of my adult life in college. So every time somebody's like, have you thought about doing NaNoWriMo? I'm like, have you heard about this thing called finals that are crossing the horizon, coming closer to us every day?
Yeah. Oh, we got a few minutes left. Where can people find out more information about y'all's stuff, and especially Rachel with the new Chrome Girls Press anthology?
Absolutely. So there's our website, cronegirlspress.com, and you can also go to our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/cronegirls. And then if you want to pick up a copy of the book, you can go on over to Amazon, and we are there. If you are a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you will be able to read the book when it launches on October 1st. And if you want to have a copy for your very own, you can pre-order it now, and it will be delivered right to your Kindle at the stroke of midnight. So right after midnight, you can start reading all of the stories that we tell.
And that's coming out October the 1st, right?
October 1st, yep.
Yeah, awesome. And Elizabeth?
You can find me at deadfishbooks.com, which has a Facebook page as well as a website, a Twitter that needs to be resurrected. It was one of the victims of the pandemic. Just sometimes it's just not good to be near Twitter. And the Instagram, which is mostly cat photos and pictures of a stuffed play doctor. And what you can find at Dead Fish Books is A, free stuff if you sign up for a mailing list, and B, my mom's novels, because that's one of the leg up of being older is that you have had more time to get stuff written. Which one is a T-Space series, which starts with the Silent Runner War, which is eco-terrorists versus the evil corporation, and everyone's stuck between them both.
Very good, very good. And I'm just going to throw this out there too, everybody. Dead Pixel Pictures. We have our preview of the movie short for The Devil's Due. You can check that out on deadpixelpictures.com, and it's on YouTube as well. But it's only the preview is only like a minute, so I just want to throw that out there because I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty proud of the work that we've done on it, and I feel like it's a great beginning. We're gonna have a Rachel, you should share this too. But we're gonna have a world watch party on the Continual group on Facebook. Rachel, you've got a Continual watch party coming up soon too, don't you?
We do, tentatively scheduled for Saturday, and all of the information will be out. We'll be spreading the word. If you're a member of the Continual Facebook group, which I highly recommend, the event will be there. If you're a member of our Facebook group, and we'll also be sharing the word on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here today.
Well, thanks for having us.